So like you said, copper roofing is a premium roofing product, and not everybody is going to be able to afford that. But if you look at copper roofing, it goes back for decades and centuries. All over the world, people have used copper for roofing and flashings and things like that.
Okay.
So
And you just mentioned that like in areas where people have hailstorms frequently or there are bad weather conditions, they have these concerns about copper or installing something like this much premium on their roofs. So what are the areas, or like is it something that is for specific areas or specific states, or is it something that can be installed for every roof, like who can afford this?
But yeah, the common misconception is, we just don't need it, but it's very critical to have it in very important parts on your roof, your flashings, when it comes to like a chimney flashing or the roof and the chimney collide, to have copper on there, because you got to think you have a lot of water coming down the roof.
Wow. So what are the biggest disasters that you made in your career or on your jobs, and that you feel that if you share them here, that would help them, other people or other roofers, avoid them?
One time we had a roof tore off and a huge rainstorm came, and right before the rain got to us, we were able to tarp the whole roof. So it's just little small things like that could have been super disastrous, right? But it goes back to, as a contractor, doing things right throughout the process.
That copper is definitely a premium product, so the cost goes higher when you use this. So does the insurance companies try to lowball the claim, like when you are using copper?
Yeah, copper is copper. It's premium product, and a lot of times they'll try to say, "Oh, that's painted metal."
Now I will be in that race and I will prove you that I have built this $50 million company. And as you just said, that it comes with a lot of stress. You will never achieve serenity, tranquility, and you will miss a lot of things.
Then what was it worth to build all this? No amount of money is going to make you happy. Now, people, I know people are going to be like, "Oh yeah, well, if I had a lot of money, I'd be really happy." Well, guess what? The more you have, the more you can lose.
There are not many courses or knowledge available dedicated to copper, that how to do this kind of work. So let's just say someone wants to get into this right now. What it would be the step-by-step approach to just pursue the copper work?
Because honestly, there's just not a lot of places out there where you can go and just learn copper work, right? And I know not everybody is going to be exposed to it like I was. Like right now, say 5 years ago, if I just wanted to start another roofing company, I may have been one of those that just fizzled out in 5 years.
Hey everyone, welcome to the latest episode of the Roofing Millionaires podcast, the only roofing podcast where we don't promote anyone and we don't sell you anything. In this episode, we are sitting down with Kaleb LYLES from Copper Masters Roofing in Mississippi, and this episode is dedicated to copper roofing, just like Kaleb has dedicated his life to copper. We have discussed how copper roofing is different from all other kinds of roofing and what kind of knowledge or licensing you need specifically to become a master in copper installation. And as the conversation moved forward, we also discussed some deep topics like, should you really be motivated by all the charms of this hustle culture that are being shown on social media, and why it is important to know your roots before you get into business. This episode covers the extensive experience of Kaleb in copper and also tells you what are the things you need to know to create a business that gives you peace. Do like and subscribe to our YouTube channel if you want us to bring more roofing experts like this on the show, so you can learn from their valued wisdom. Let's dive in. Welcome to the Roofing Millionaires podcast, Kaleb. It's great to have you on the show. What's going on in your life these days?
Yeah, thanks, Mohammed. It's glad to be here on your podcast. Thanks for having me. Man, we're just doing good these days. Business is really good. Personal life is good. And just going with it.
Okay, that's great to know. So tell me a little about yourself. Like, how was your childhood and how did you end up in roofing, and what are you doing professionally in Masters Copper Masters Roofing?
Yeah. So I had a great childhood, the typical childhood, but my dad, the only thing that wasn't typical about it is he was a roofing contractor. So he was a home builder and a roofing contractor. He got tired of people messing up the roofing and the flashing part of it when he was building homes and commercial buildings. And so Back in the 70s and the early 80s, he started learning that. He took several classes on it at that time. He remembered being out in California on vacation and seeing guys soldering copper with the old school soldering irons over a fire. And so he started learning that, developed that, brought that back to Mississippi, and kind of honed in and singled in and niched down to roofing and copper flashing and stuff like that. So I grew up with that influence, going to school, and then on the summer breaks and spring breaks and things like that, going to work for him. I guess back in the day I had a little bit of an attention problem. They didn't really know what it was back then or how to treat it. So my mom on summer break and spring break instead of you staying here at the house, you're going to go work with your dad. He can deal with you. And so at a young age, 7, 8 years old to 11 years old, I was out with my dad on spring break and summer break working, doing roofing. And he's like, well, I don't know what to do with this kid in the truck with me every day. So why don't you get out here and just start picking up trash, and that ought to shut you up. And so I started with doing that, and it just sprung into where I'm at now. I own a business. He taught me something then. I didn't really know what it was all about, but he taught me how to make a living, how to work hard, and take care of my family. Yeah.
Perfect. And did your dad start this Copper Masters Roofing, or is it a company that you started?
No, so Copper Masters Roofing is a company that I started about 6 years ago now. And it was just paying homage to my dad. It's like at the time I started a company called Caldrea Construction, and that was my name and my wife's name put together.
Okay.
And so it was Caldrea Construction. We were a roofing company and flashing. And what I was trying to do is cater towards other roofing contractors, because I know they need flashing work and stuff like that. But with Caldrea Construction, we kept getting, phone calls. Hey, do you do closet remodels? Do you do additions? Can you, remodel this house? I just don't. I can do all that, but I wanted to niche down. And I wanted to do, roofing and copper work. So that's when we decided that we would rebrand the company, and we were sitting there throwing around ideas, and a picture of my dad came up on my phone that had him doing copper work. And I was right there with him. And I'm like, that's what it's going to be, something with copper in it. And we just brainstormed, and that's when we came up with the name Copper Masters Roofing.
Cool. But I personally don't know many things about copper, and I guess that many people also don't know about copper roofing, because it isn't common. It is considered a premium thing in roofing. So I would want to shape this conversation so we can give some foundational knowledge to people who are who are willing to get into copper, or the people who have some misconceptions about copper roofing in general, and the homeowners who might want to have this on their roof. So you have been working with copper since your childhood. So let's just begin with, what are the misconceptions that normally people like me or people who don't know much about copper have about copper roofing?
Yeah. So like you said, copper roofing is a premium roofing product, and not everybody is going to be able to afford that. But if you look at copper roofing, it goes back for decades and centuries. All over the world, people have used copper for roofing and flashings and things like that. So it is more of an expensive product. And so the common everyday person is not just going to clad their whole roof with copper, so to speak, right?
Yes.
But it is important to understand copper flashing and those type details where, roofing runs into brick walls and guttering and things like that. Those are smaller ticket items, so to speak, that if you spend the money, although it is more premium priced and it may cost a little more to do it, but if you spend the money and have that done right the first time by a qualified installer, it will last a lifetime if it's done right. Whereas if somebody uses just cheap painted metal or aluminum, or they go to the big box store and they just grab some cheap flashing, they're going to get what they pay for in the end, because one, it's probably not going to be installed correctly, and two, it's an inferior product. And so in those crucial points on your roof where you need flashing to last for a long time, you put the cheaper material in there. And so when you do that, it doesn't have that long of a lifespan, and it can lead to more work having to be done. And that costs the homeowner in the end more money. And so the money that they would have saved, that they saved going the cheap route, it's going to wind up costing them more when they have to have somebody like me come back, tear all that work out, put it back the way it's supposed to be. And then, they could have saved money in the long run by just going with a better product in that area.
Okay, and as you have just mentioned that it is something that if installed correctly can last for your lifetime. But back in time when you were starting out this company, I am sure that people have concerns about copper, or like when they are moving into a different price bracket, because this isn't something that everyone has on their roof. So how do you convince someone besides this price point, like besides these things, that it's going to last your lifetime? Because this is something that they would realize once they have it on their roof, that if it's going to last that longer or not, or if these things will happen or not. So how did you convince people, or how did you find out your target audience right when you were beginning?
Yeah. Yeah, that is the thing that we get a lot of pushback on. Whenever somebody calls us out to give them a quote, they're like, well,
Mhm.
the other guy was this much cheaper. And then, you look at their quotes and you start breaking it down, and we're using copper, they're using painted metal.
Mhm.
So what I do is I used to carry around a photo album book. This is way
Okay.
back, like 25 years ago, before all the social
Mhm.
media and all of our platforms had everything that we do right there. So I would just stand there, and while I'm on their roof measuring, I would just say, hey, here's some pictures of my work. And what I would do is I'd have a picture of it done incorrectly and then how we
Mhm.
fixed it beside it. And so I'd allow
Mhm.
them to have that photo album, and they just sit there and flip through it. By the time I got down off the roof, they would see like,
Mhm.
okay, I can see this quality. I can see how much damage that caused. So I think just back in the day, it was easier for me and my dad just to educate people about, what they needed, why it's better to go that way. Nowadays, there's so many options. There's so many people doing it, right? And so it's harder. So that's why now we have social media. So on my social media platforms, I try to be an advocate for things being done right and show you through my social media, hey, here's what somebody did. I don't hold anything back. Look how shoddy this work was. It's poor craftsmanship. Here's what we're doing to fix it. And so I think seeing is believing for most people, right? And
Yes.
especially in this day and age when we're all just programmed to just sit here and scroll, we have to be able to show them in a glance, why they should go with us. So it is
Mhm.
harder, but if you can just sit there and talk with the individual and show them why it's better, help explain it, then I have a good success and close rating with people going with us. Unfortunately, some people just want, cheap. How cheap can I get it done? I may not be here in 2 years. I may sell the house in 5 years. We may have a hailstorm in 6 months or, 5 years from now. So let's just go with the cheapest product and go. So unfortunately, we've gotten into that time frame where it is harder and to just convince people to go with the copper flashing.
Okay, and you just mentioned that like in areas where people have hailstorms frequently, or there are bad weather conditions, they have these concerns about copper or installing something like this much premium on their roofs. So what are the areas, or like is it something that is for specific areas or specific states, or is it something that can be installed for every roof, like who can afford this? But people have this general fear, like they have this wrong belief or misbelief in their mind.
Yeah. So hail is a very soft product, and it can be heated up by large hail. If it's pea size hail or nickel size hail, it can withstand all that. But yeah, the common misconception is, we just don't need it, but it's very critical to have it in very important parts on your roof, your flashings. When it comes to like a chimney flashing where the roof and the chimney collide, to have copper on there, because you got to think you have a lot of water coming down the roof, and it's going right behind that chimney, and so it's exposed to a lot of water. So an inferior product like galvanized or aluminum or things like that, they can just break down over the years. Galvanized, I'm sure you've seen it where it rusts out and it corrodes and it starts leaking in, and so that's an important spot is your chimney. And then dormers, barrel dormer roofs, you've seen that on my social media where people put the copper there and they use copper, but they don't have a qualified installer or a craftsman to do it to where they'll actually solder it. A lot of times they just put caulk there and it starts leaking. Like yesterday, we just did a copper dormer that the house is only 8 years old in that neighborhood.
Okay.
And there was rotten plywood and dormer roofing material that was degraded by the water being in there for 8 years. So from the time it was built, it was having
Mhm.
issues because of the poor craftsmanship from the guy that installed it. And so that's why it's important. It's critical in those points. You may not be able to have a solid copper roof, but in those critical flashing points and gutters, I'm sure that you've seen plenty of gutters where, unless they're seamless, they have a bunch of seams. They're always leaking right there at the corners and everything. Well, if you use copper and you solder it correctly, it's not going to leak for a long time, you know?
Okay. Okay. You just mentioned the word that you don't have qualified workers or qualified installers doing this for you. So let's just say that if someone wants to learn this, is there any specific kind of licensing or something that is or knowledge that is required to do copper installations, even flashings or roofing in particular, that is specific for copper?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I wish there was more. You know, I'm sure there's some programs and things like that out there that you can take. But like I learned by watching it done. You know, I was trained over 30 years of how to do this. Even if you go to the big box stores or you look online at flashing details, it will have you just, you know, oh, cut this and bend around the corner and add caulk. So it is a big need for it actually. And I've been thinking about that here more and more. I have a lot of people reach out to me because they see that, hey, I do something a little different with flashing, and they started asking me questions. So I would say if you see somebody in your social media community that looks like they know what they're doing and they're doing it right, reach out to them and ask them. You know, you have to learn and know that it's done wrong. Once you're in the roofing industry for enough time, I think you can see, okay, this didn't work. This flashing didn't work. We had to go back and repair this. We need to do something different here. Okay.
Mhm.
How do we do something different here? Let's look it up. Let's learn about it. Let's get a technician to come in and train our staff and our crew. And then that way we can do it right from here on out.
Okay, but there is a problem here, Caleb. I hope you would agree with me. I think that you are obsessed with copper. Like you know that I have to deliver value. You are there to do something extraordinary. But if someone who just gets into this and they know that it is a premium product with premium margins, so they are not having the same mindset as yours. So when they don't get business, they will focus on the sales aspect, like they will hire more sales reps, they will do sales training rather than focusing on this training and acquiring knowledge part. So do you agree with me that a lot of this comes down to the kind of businessman you are as well, or the kind of person you are?
I do. 100% I can agree with that statement. It's the type of businessman you are, the type of company that you're building, the culture of it is, and not every company has that, unfortunately. But you can tell when a company has that culture and that mindset of, hey, we need to do everything right by the books. And it doesn't just start with craftsmanship and installing things. It bleeds all the way down through the company, from ownership to management to the crews doing the work,
Hmm?
as to what type of a company that is. And it affects not only the craftsmanship of your company and the product that you install, but it also affects every portion of your company all the way down to accounting and bookkeeping and you know, the same type of person that's going to cross every T and dot every I with craftsmanship is also going to make sure that, you know, they're paying all their bills on time. They're paying their salespeople on time. They're not commingling funds in their bank accounts. You know, they're not evading taxes and things like that illegally. You know, so yeah, like you said, company culture, it's 100% about that. And a company that really cares about going the extra mile, you can sell all these, you know, top tier packages with shingle brands and things like that. But if you're not hitting all the aspects of your company down the line, then something's going to fall through the cracks. And a lot of times you can see that with craftsmanship and people not going the extra mile to learn about, you know, copper work per se. I have a book from Revere Copper that I bought that has a lot of steps of how you use copper, how you can clad with it, how you can lock the seams, how you solder, and things like that. And unfortunately, there's just not a lot of guys. That's kind of a niche work with copper work. And so when it comes to these companies, like you said, it is a premium product. Hey, I can add a bunch of money to the bill and I can get a nice commission off of that check. That's all I'm worried about. And so they do that, you know, a couple of tubes of caulk, some ice and water around it, and we're good to go. When all they've done is, you know, transferred that problem to the homeowner a few years down the road. And I just had that case in the copper dormer that we just did yesterday. A huge company in town did the roof. They got the roof approved through the insurance company for hail damage. And then when it came to the copper dormer, it was going to probably take another couple of months to fight that out and get 2 or 3 estimates for the copper work to be done and go like that. So instead of fighting it out and doing it properly, they just said, all right, well, it looks fine. We'll just put some caulk around it and we'll do the roof, get the money, and take off. They did that. And from day one, the customers kept calling them back. Hey, we're having problems around the dormer. Drywall is falling in the ceiling. Come fix this. They could never fix it. They just wanted to add caulk on top of it. And so the homeowner finally got tired enough where they Googled us, and we're right down the road from them, came out, looked at it last week, gave them a price, did the work, but it cost them over $3,000 to have the work done now, where that could have just been wrapped up into the insurance claim. And it was just really sad to see that.
Okay, that's interesting because I had something that I wanted to brought up later in this interview, but you just mentioned here that the homeowners, they Googled you and they found you. And I have seen your Instagram particularly. That is so damn good because you are sharing videos that make you credible in your hometown. But at the same time, I see people who are not in favor of social media, like they want to do door to door, they want to do this and that. What I personally feel is that social media is a great way to just show up yourself in front of people, and if your audience is on social media, you must be there. So how is that turning out for you, and how did you crack that?
With social media, I've always, like I told you, it started way back. My first forms of social media were the photo album with the book with before and after shots. And I had probably 350 pictures. It was a huge photo album. And so that was my very first form of social media. But I grew up, my mom and dad had a very nice Canon camera, one of the old ones from like the 70s and 80s, I guess. And they loved taking pictures when we went on vacation of the family, things like that. So I saw that, and I guess with my mind, it just clicked. Hey, when we get together, we're going to take a picture. Hey, we're going to take a picture of this. It's beautiful. Or, hey, this was some good work that we did. So through the years, I've just always been, hey, this is what I'm going to do is when we go on vacation, I'm going to get pictures. Now we call it content. I'm always looking when I step out of my truck, when I'm in my office, what can I highlight? How can I get content? How can I use that for my company? So yeah, in my local service area, I'm widely known by realtors, homeowners, other roofing contractors, whether they like it or not. I know they follow me. I know they look at my stuff. That has even led to other roofing contractors reaching out because they say, okay, this guy's doing it differently. We've been having problems with this. Let's see if we can get his company to do the copper work. And so I do copper flashing work for several roofing companies in my local service area. Not only that, I have other companies from all over the nation reaching out to me to ask me about it. They'll send me their eagle views or pictures and site plans and architectural drawings of houses that we're working on. And they ask for my opinion. What would you do with this situation? Do you use copper flashing here? Things like that. And so it's very interesting to see how, like you said, using social media to build that platform, to build awareness, to put your brand out there, to explain what you do. And I always say I like to give more to my community than I ask or take from my community. And so I want to put it out there. Hey, this is what I'm doing. This is why we do it. This is what somebody else did. This is why it failed. This is what somebody else did. This is why it went well, which I can't say that too many times because it always fails. But social media is such a big thing. But it goes back to something that you and I were just talking about previously is it's the type of contractor that you are. Now, I get it. Not everybody's used to being in front of the camera or pulling their camera out. Like you said, they're just trying to knock the doors. I gotta sign 10 deals today. I gotta sign 40 deals this week. I gotta make all this money. What if they would just slow down and focus on the art, their craft, the skill of what they're doing, and take those pictures, then it would only help build their brand. But like earlier you said about, the type of contractor that takes pride in their work and everything. We talked about that. And I think it comes down to that. A lot of people may not want to show people what they're doing up there. You know what I'm saying? With my customers, when I go to a homeowner's house and they're having all these problems for, several years in a row, and I start taking pictures and I stand there on the front porch or at their dining room table, I say, hey, this is what's going on up there. And they're like, well, we paid somebody 4 or 5 different times to fix this. And I'm like, well, the only thing that they've done is just caulk this each time and charged you money for it. I'm like, did they show you pictures before they did the job, after they did the job? While they were doing the job? No, we never got a single picture. They just said they took care of the product. Well, that contractor knew they were doing it wrong and they should be ashamed of their work, But I think you should take those pictures. You should build that content. You should build that brand awareness for your company and your community. And it'll only, add to the credibility of your company and who you are as a contractor.
And I have another question here, Caleb, that a lot of times, as you just said, that people have this fear of camera, and that is totally fine. You can use other ways too. What I see is that many people use their Instagrams or Facebooks or social media pages just as a graphic designing showcase. Like they have the best designs there, they have the posts and all these things. They are just posting generic stuff. Whereas I feel that every town, every state, every city has different kind of issues, and every niche has different kind of issues as well. And if you just start highlighting that, like you just mentioned here, that you want to give more than you want to take from your community. So what would be your advice to someone who wants to build his or her brand on social media? Like what kind of content or what kind of stuff, or what's the overall strategy they should be following?
Yeah, I I think it doesn't really come down. Well, for me, it's not strategy. I'm just out there grassroots every day. I'm documenting the process. If you never saw my face on camera, I still have my camera talking about what's going on. But if you're shy and you're not really into the camera, the spotlight, you don't understand it, that's okay. The truth is, you probably have two or three people in your company that
Yes.
and they do like to be in front of the camera. Well, have them do it, have them explain it, and it'll go a long way. And then just put it out there. And like you said, everything looks like it's professionally branded and it's all chopped up. It's this commercial. Like, just think
Yes.
about it. Whenever you're
Yes.
watching TV or you're watching a movie and a commercial comes on, what do? You change the channel, right?
Yes.
You don't want to see it. You want to watch the movie that you're watching. Same thing with when we're scrolling on Instagram. You're looking at everybody, oh, they're on vacation, they're this, and then all of a sudden, buy a roof from me, and it's all professional and everything. It's like scroll next one, right? And so I think for me, I just don't like that. If you look at my social media, I'm out
Yeah.
there, I'm showing you a mix of like what I'm doing. I'm trying to entertain you at the same time with something funny, drinking from a water faucet or talking about somebody's shoddy craftsmanship, something to catch your attention and get you to think, that guy kind of knows what he's talking about. Maybe I should follow him or like his stuff. Or they see my brand everywhere. I'm sure, like in this podcast, I've got it on the wall, I've got it on my hat, I've got it on my shirt. Be proud about that brand. And so if you're not comfortable with doing social media and getting content, pick somebody in your company that is. A lot of times some of these companies that you see all over TV and hear all over the radio and all over
Hmm.
social media, and it's all
Hmm.
chopped up and perfect, but they
Hmm.
lose a lot of people because you just keep scrolling. And I think if you just have that raw honesty that you just want to present your company and the facts and show them why your company is better for them, I think in the long run that'll work out if you just push yourself into it. There's plenty of apps. There's a lot of
Hmm.
guys and companies out there that you can pay to come to your company and do spotlight,
Yes.
recording around it and put all this content out for you. But at the same time, you want to make sure it's not too cheesy, it's not too dialed in, it's not too perfect, because you could get lost in the scroll.
You know what I feel about this is that people don't want you to be perfect, because if you are being perfect, then you are not relatable to them, because everyone around you, they make mistakes, and you have to tell people that you mess up as well. And that has I have another question about this in my mind. Back in the interview, you just mentioned that people don't want to share the secrets or the real thing, and that comes down to the scarcity that they have. Like, you are sharing the real things as well, and you have other contractors who are reaching out to you. Even your own area, I bet there must be contractors or roofers who are doing the copper work, who are learning from you, but they are not sharing that same thing on the internet because they don't want to share the real things. They just want to share the promotional stuff. So what do you have to say about that?
Like you just said, drop the mic. Yeah, no, it is. It is. I've seen that, people using the stuff that I do and trying to perfect their brand or that. The problem with it is they're never going to do it like I do it, right? they can watch it and they can try to imitate it, but it's just not going to be done like that. And then there's guys in my area that I'm just going to be honest. I'm not going to ever be like them, and nor would I want to be with them. I don't know what their struggles are to have gotten where they've gotten and built their company to where they've built it. I know how hard it is for me to drive my company, and I know how I like to be with my family and things like that. And so my dad told me, he's like, son, quit looking at the other guy and focus on what you've got going right here. Because you can spend all your time and waste all your time worried about what they've got and what they're doing, and you miss out on the bigger picture of what you have going over here and building your brand and things like that. So yeah, I feel like there are guys in my industry and in my service area, and I've got several of them that we call each other, we talk, we trade workout with each other. If I couldn't get to something, they could gladly get to it for me. Or if they can't handle the copper work, or something, they send it to me. I just did a roof for one of my fellow roofing contractors that the color was wrong on a metal roof that he put on. Nothing wrong with the install. It looked great. All right. But the customer was unhappy with the color. It was supposed to be a certain color. And if you look at the sample charts, it just looks different. And so the homeowner at that point was so upset that he's like, I'd rather another contractor do this. And so the contractor that I'm friends with said, well, I know a guy. He's the only person that I would trust in this service area to do this. And so I was able to meet his homeowner, talk through the process, tell him how we're going to do it, show him pictures. We did the roof for him. We put the new roof on it, and they're super happy. Everybody involved is glad that it's just done and over with. But at the end of the day, we got through and the homeowner said, thank you very much. And I'll be referring the other guy. I said, just send all credit to him and give him the work. So it's pretty cool that to build that community and things like that.
And I feel that if you are coming with this mindset to provide value, you learn from your mistakes. It's okay to make mistakes, but if you are learning from it, that's right. So speaking of this, I'm sure that you have made disasters in your career as well, in earlier jobs or maybe even now. So what are the biggest disasters that you made in your career or on your jobs, and that you feel that if you share them here, that would help them, other people or other roofers, avoid them?
Yeah. I can't point to something that like, hey, we did this just hugely wrong. Although I know I'm not perfect, and yes, there's probably instances out there, little small things here or there. But it's been like, hey, we tore somebody's mailbox up or something like that. But it goes back to the type of contractor you are. I will say this is I know there's instances that I've messed up. Maybe a solder broke and it leaked a little bit here or there, or we mislapped a shingle, or one time we had a roof tore off and a huge rainstorm came. And right before the rain got to us, we were able to tarp the whole roof. So it's just little small things like that that could have been super disastrous, right? But it goes back to, as a contractor, doing things right throughout the process. And so when we're doing copper work, for instance, I take my time with each piece that we put on someone's house, each lap, each bend, each solder. And we try to make sure that we do everything that we can while we're there so we don't have phone calls back. And I don't have a huge department that runs around and just fixes service calls and mess ups. Probably every year I have maybe 2 or 3 calls where I go back and it was something that, maybe the wind blew something up, or we actually did lap something wrong. But it's only a couple of times a year out of hundreds of jobs that we do. And so we just take our time and we dial in with each piece that we touch. And even before, say, a copper dormer roof, before we even put the copper back on it, we make sure that we have high temp ice and water on. We make sure that we put the copper on, we solder it. When we put our panels together, even though they're going to be lapped and locked, we still put caulk in between each panel and everything. So we do all the steps on the front end and take our time. That way on the back end, we don't have to go back. The next time I want to hear from a homeowner or a fellow roofing contractor is not, hey, you have an issue, you got to come back and fix it. Is, hey, I referred you to so-and-so. Or, hey, I have another project I need you to come help me with. And so that's what I'm trying to do. Although I know I'm not perfect, and I know there's been instances that I misjudged something, miscalculated. I've lost projects because of that, and somebody else took the project. But at the end of the day, I'm happy knowing that when I see a customer, a roofing contractor at a restaurant or at Walmart or things like that, I can go up and shake their hand and have a good, honest conversation about what's going on in their life instead of worrying about, oh, I hope they don't see me because I messed up their roof or I took a bunch of money from them and didn't finish the job. I want to do that all right on the front end. And it comes back to who you are as a contractor, what the culture is of your company, and it just trickles all the way down.
Awesome. And speaking of losing jobs, I feel that not everyone is your client, so you have to say no at times, and you have said that too. So, what do you feel should be the criteria to say no to a job, or let's just say in your mind, what is your criteria of saying no to a homeowner or a job? And we can also rephrase this like, what do you feel should be the criteria of a genuine roofer to say no to a job?
Yeah. I wish other roofers thought about that more because, like you said earlier in the podcast, a lot of them are just trying to make a sales number at the end of the year. I want to make this much money. Look at me. And so they take every client, right? And we all know that there's those clients that are just not your clients. One of the biggest ones are for me, if I go and look at, say, a retail roof, and they say, well, we need your estimate. Well, okay, let's talk about this. Where are you at in the process? Have you already filed a claim? Yeah, we filed a claim. We need 3 estimates. Okay. All right. Well, I'm probably not going to be on the same line as these. Let's look at it. And so if they're starting to say that I've got 5 or 6 estimates or 8 estimates, one time I sat down at the dining room table, I'm talking with the people, and they had 7 other estimates that they said, and they needed mine so they can make a decision. I just politely said, I'm not going to be your guy. I'm sorry to waste your time. And I got up and left. Well, you don't want to try to get the job? I said, no, I'd love to do the work for you, but I'm not going to sit there and compete against 8 other guys. And so that was like one of those customers where I'm like, if they're willing to go through all that hassle, they're probably not going to be the customer for me, right? Or, it's big for companies to eat deductibles, or hey, if you let us put a sign in your yard, or so on and so forth, we'll eat your deductible. Well, that's just not me. I'm trying to build a business that's going to be here and stand the test of time. And so when there are problems that I can, I'm going to be here to service the work that I do and fulfill my warranties if something's wrong with my work, And so if people start asking me to eat deductibles, or so-and-so just got their roof and, the biggest contractor in town just ate their deductible, well, I'm sorry, go with them. Maybe they're going to be the better fit for you. And there's been customers where I'm like, well, we're running a little low on work. I'll probably go ahead and take them. And those have been some of the biggest ones when I should have, my spider senses were going off and I didn't heed the warnings and I took the job, and then we get halfway through it and I'm the worst contractor ever, and then they want to keep money and things like that. And I've looked back and I've been like, okay, I saw the warning sign when we first met them, but I pushed through for the sale. And now it's cost me in the end. I've done everything that you're supposed to, buy code, pulled a permit, got all the, updated them. This one lady I upgraded to a premium color and everything and didn't charge her a dime. And then in brand new gutters, she had 5-inch gutters. She got 6-inch K-style gutters with premium gutter guards. But I didn't heed the warnings in the beginning, and it wound up that she found fault with something on the gutters, that water was coming over the front edge or something, and said my gutters were leaking. And she wanted to keep $8,000 of my money. And so it all came back to I should have not been focused on the sale, but focused on who that was as a person, and then just, not done business with them in the start.
And I personally feel that you are more respected when you do things like that in the longer run. People might hate you on the spot, but in the longer run, you have respect of the people who actually want to work with you. And you just mentioned about the deductibles as well. So speaking of that, I had a question about insurance, that copper is definitely a premium product. So the cost goes higher when you use this. So does the insurance companies try to lowball the claim when you are the contractor, or when the price goes higher, like when you are using copper?
Yeah, copper is copper. It's premium product, and a lot of times they'll try to say, "Oh, that's painted metal." No, it's not. It's copper. And then we're all used to what the Exactimates and everything saying that a copper dormer is only worth $140 or something like that, when it's really a $2,800 dormer, or $1,500 dormer, or the one that we just did was a $3,200 dormer. So it's there. And so as a professional, I'm able to give 30 years of experience with copper work when I write out my proposals and my bids. And when I turn that into the insurance company through my documentation, proving that it's copper by actually scratching it, and showing that it's real copper, showing the hail hits, showing where it's unbuckled a little bit at the seams, that proper documentation. And I'm able to walk it right through for the customer through the insurance process, and the insurance company, they'll take care of that in the long run, or they should. But a lot of people, like I said earlier, that copper dormer that we did was holding up the check on probably $1,000 shingle roof for a $3,000 dormer. And so they just cut their losses, put some silicone around it, and didn't want to fight the process for the customer, which they should have done, So yeah, the insurance companies, they can play those games, but if you have that proper documentation, and at the end of the day, if you want to do it right for your customer and make sure that that gets covered as well, or even if it doesn't get covered, really tell them, hey, 2 tubes of caulking is not going to fix what really needs to be fixed on here. We really need to tear this off and redo it in this process, and do it right there. Don't just do the roof. Send the copper work down the road, and then a year later, the customer is having major problems and has to come out of all this out-of-pocket expense that they weren't planning on. Go through the entire process with your customers. Give them all the options. Now, I know that's true. We could say that all day long, but some home builders building brand new homes, they're just trying to just got to do 30 houses this month, or 100 houses a year. We just got to go to the big box store and just slap some on there and go. Or the homeowners too may be, hey, I need you to eat my deductible. And so the contractor's like, well, if we apply $3,000 worth of copper work to your deductible, and we'll just put some caulking on here. So it comes back to, being honest with what you're doing in your company, and I know sometimes the homeowner is like, hey, we want to be a little dishonest. We don't want to pay our deductible. How can we get around this? And so they shortchange themselves in the long run, right? By not having the work done properly. So I know it's not all on the contractors. It could be on the homeowners, and then home builders when they're building brand new homes, just trying to, turn it out, get the houses built, put them out there. And so I think it comes back to, if you just take your time and do what's best for the customer to start with, and help them and give them all the options. And then as a customer, really looking at it like, hey, if I'm going to save all this money, what's it going to cost me in the long run?
Perfect. And I feel that there is another factor here too that is involved. I was discussing this with Jason from Teflon Roofing the other day, that a lot of hype is about scaling the business and adding more volume to your work. Like you just mentioned that home builders want to do 30 houses a year, or more, even more than that. And the roofers, they want to do 500 roofs a year or 1,000 roofs a year. They just want to increase the number. And when you get into that race, there are some things that you have to compromise. And I have a feeling about this inside of me, that you don't need to scale your business to millions or multi-millions every single time. If you are a local brand and you are happy with that, and you have your little community or a group of people, 100 people, 1,000 people, or even 5,000 people who are happy with you, and you are serving them, then it's just fine. Because when you are in that race, there are some things that you will compromise for sure.
Yeah. A lot gets missed when you're in that race, or there's so much volume going through your hands. And that's great. You've built this huge company. You've got all these salesmen, and you own all the advertisement. And now private equity is looking to buy you out. That's great. But there's a lot that's missed.
Just give me a moment, Kaleb.
Okay.
Yes.
It's all good. And so, yeah, there's a lot that's missed with that, right? And there's going to be customers that are disgruntled. There's one case that I could think of with this company that was trying to scale and get a little bigger. And there's a customer right now that it would probably cost them probably $15,000 or $20,000 to fix the problems with the roof that they did. Well, now this customer is very disgruntled, and now they're trying to sue them, and all this other stuff has happened, right? And so that could have been avoided if they would have just taken a little more time, done the process the right way. Right? Instead of like trying to just focus on big, better, faster, and more. But I know I'm probably, talking to a wall right here by saying that, because everybody's hyped up about the dollar, and I got to make more, and I want to be a top producer. I want to be $1 million producer. That's great. That's fine. But dial it back just a little bit. Focus on your customers, right? Because at the end of the day, if you've got good customer experience, and you've got a good name and reputation with your brand, then the jobs are going to come. A lot of times I do work off of referrals. When we do one house in a neighborhood, I'm going to get 7 or 8 referrals from there, either in that neighborhood or outside of that neighborhood. So I've been able to do great with focusing on, like you said, I've got my little niche, I've got my company. I'm able to focus on my customers and building those relationships with the local contractors, not just roofers, landscaping guys, fence builders, deck builders, general remodelers, realtors. They see what you do. They can appreciate the value of it. Well, whenever they do come across somebody that needs some work, they're going to send them your way because they know you're an honest guy. They know your company is doing things right at the end of the day. And just like you said, the lure of growing and scaling and everything like that, I guess I've never been that way. Yeah, it would be nice to be like a $50 million company, but the stress that comes with that to get there,
Yes.
I couldn't handle that. I'm not that kind of person. I had somebody ask me, hey, you want to try to band together and let's go after the big guys across town. I'm really not interested in that. I'm going to go after them by doing what I do. Just be consistent, have good, reputation, and do right by the customers. And if I lose jobs to them, then so be it. But at the end of the day, like you said in one of your other podcasts, still follow up with them. Still be nice in the process when you're doing it, because you never know when the other guy is going to mess up. And the homeowner's going to have to call you in to fix it. And so I just want to be there as that authority of the matter and showing what we do and having that genuine, concern for the customer, and then focusing on my craftsmanship at the same time.
And you know what I believe, Caleb, that even if you have said that you have audacity to tell this, that I am happy where you are, where I am, someone will show up and they will tell you that you are just being a jerk by being comfortable where you are. And now you have that inner fear that you want to prove to that person that I am not a jerk and I'm not comfortable where I am. And now I will be in that race and I will prove you that I have built this $50 million company. And as you just said, that it comes with a lot of stress. You will never achieve serenity, tranquility, and you will miss a lot of things, the players of life, and a lot of other things as well. So do you feel that a lot of this comes down to the fears that we have generalized or we have normalized as the society because of these motivational speakers and these gurus who tell you that you cannot be comfortable where you are? And to some extent, I believe that you shouldn't be comfortable, but you should know your limits too.
Yeah. I do believe always growing, always
Yes.
learning. And while you're doing it, if you are getting bigger, then that's great. But if you're getting bigger and look at all the shock and awe and all this money and everything, but there's so much falling apart through the layers of your company, you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Or you're missing out on all these, your life over here. Then what was it worth to build all this? No amount of money is going to make you happy. Now, people, I know people are going to be like, oh, yeah, well, if I had a lot of money, I'd be really happy. Well, guess what? The more you have, the more you can lose. The more you have, the more people want. The more you get, the more that, can be taken away from you. The more you can lose. The bigger, better house, the more maintenance it costs. The bigger, better vehicle, the more maintenance it costs. There's always a trade-off there. And at the end of the day, you mentioned it earlier, just being content with what you got, and building a good brand and a good reputation and doing right by your homeowners and the fellow contractors that you serve. At the end of the day, yeah, it may make some people mad. I'm not trying to be a jerk about it. This is what I'm doing. This is where I'm at. And this is how I'm building. But at the end of the day, when I go home and I lay my head on the pillow, I'm done for the day. I'm not thinking about, something that I did wrong, or all of our bills are taken care of. All of the things that we have are being paid for. You know what I'm saying? The people that work for me in my company are taken care of. That's great. That's where I need to be. That's right where I need to be, is where I can focus on that kind of thing. Yeah. And
I read a post.
That's just not common now. Like you said, the gurus, it's like bigger, better, door knocking, getting all this. And people are going to say, yeah, that's what I want. That's what I need. And there's always a trade-off in it.
Yes, and I read a post on Facebook the other day that your business is like a garden, and first of all, you have to decide the kind of garden or how small or big you want your garden to be. Then you just have to work on that garden. You have to implant flowers there, this plant and that plant, and you have to make it so nice that the butterflies, it attracts the butterflies, and the butterflies are your customers. So the first step is that you have to think in your mind that what kind of garden you exactly want, and that is what we don't think. And in roofing particularly, I think why that happens is because a lot of people come down from rock bottom, and they are either coming from a very bad phase of their life or bad background or kind of ruined lifestyle, and they just don't know where to end, or they just never think about this. And these coaches and gurus and all these books, they take advantage of that, and they just put them into a hustle that is never ending.
That's it. That's it. It's funny you mentioned garden. I remember my grandfather is from a little small country town about 30 miles from
Mhm.
here. I remember spending time with him, and he had a small garden. It was probably only
Mhm.
about 7 rows and about 30
Mhm.
feet. And
Mhm.
he had lost his arm in a hay baling accident years before.
Okay.
So he only had one arm, but he had this small garden. But in that garden, there wasn't a blade of grass, there were no insects
Yes.
or anything. But I watched that man out there with one arm hoeing that
Mhm.
garden out every day, always constantly working on that. I'm putting fertilizer on the plants, picking the insects off, hoeing the rows in the garden, and making sure there was no grass. And that was one of the most beautiful gardens, well
Mhm.
manicured.
Mhm.
It just, but what I got out of it is the work that he put into it. And that was just right for what he needed in his family to take care of them. You know what I'm saying? But it instilled in my mind it takes effort and it takes energy no matter what size you are. It's just, focusing on doing the steps right, like in that garden, cultivating it and doing the right action to make sure it's done right. Same thing with your company. It starts with, okay, I want to open a company. All right. Well, making sure that you have the bookkeeping and finances in place, and then you have the people in place, and then you have the brand deals with your shingle companies and things like that, and then your sales and things. Well, people just want to say, oh, I can go out on my own and start this roofing company and just worry about sales. Well, yeah, they're making a
Mhm.
ton of money. There's this huge money grab, but then they wind up losing it, or they've become, overcredited with the distributors, and then they wind up going out of business because they didn't do the steps right. And so that's what I want to do is I want to make sure, and I haven't always done that in my life. I'll just be honest. I've been,
Okay.
in the past, there's just been times where I was commingling funds in the bank account. It was like, 15, 20 years ago, it's like every money that came in, that was like
Mhm.
my credit limit for the day, right? Where you can't build a sustainable business like that. And I was right where I should have been at the rock
Mhm.
bottom. And as soon as I started getting finances in order and had the right company on my side with that, and then it started to springboard. Now, every job that we do, we build with that customer's resources or their money. I'm not sitting there building theirs with somebody else's money. And so
Mhm.
I may be a smaller company. I may take my time. I may not focus on all these sales and everything,
Mhm.
but I do it the way that you're supposed to do. At the end of the day, I don't want to owe a lot of people money. I don't want to have to go bankrupt or close my business or have an unhappy customer because
Mhm.
I wanted to live this lifestyle. Maybe I'm just rambling.
You just said it right. And I feel that a lot of knowledge or wisdom about finance, particularly, comes down when you have that experience or when you lose some money. But you can minimize that by acquiring some knowledge. And I, I personally read a few books about financing that just gave me the foundations that how I have to manage my finances for the entire life. And one book that really changed everything was The Richest Man in Babylon. I don't know if you are into books or not, but I believe that the learnings that you have, especially for finance, that help you. And if you can just have that foundations developed in you in your early 20s or early 30s, that last with you entire life.
Yeah, yeah, it really does. I do read books, but I don't read as many of them. I like to listen to books because I'm
Hmm.
just a contractor. At the end of the day, I'm a knuckle dragger. I came from installing roofs to now on a
Yes.
company. I'm building a company. But I do believe my dad was a home builder and a commercial builder.
Hmm.
And he always
Hmm.
told me, son, the two
Hmm.
most important things on a whole
Hmm.
structure are what?
Hmm.
And I said, man, Dad, that's got to be the jacuzzi tub and the Viking kitchen range in the kitchen, right? And my dad said, you're wrong, son. The most important things on a house or a structure are the foundation and the roof. If you've got those two things right, all the other things that make up a house will fit into place where they need to be. So with building a company, the foundation of it, I believe, is that good financial clarity, knowing where you're at. And some people are just great with numbers. They go out and start a company and it's just
Yes.
rocking and rolling for them. But a lot of us that start companies, we just knew there was something better than working for somebody 9 to 5, right? And we're like, oh, well, I see this guy's making a ton of money as the boss of a company. I'm just going to go out and start something, And so that financial foundation is not there. And so you're on that rocky foundation, and you start building this company with the roof of it trying to just be sales. Well, if the roof is sales and it's blocking the weather, you're still crumbling down here because you didn't do it right. So if you don't know finances, getting that right person, and then that's a problem too. Who's the right person for you? I personally use, and you may cut this out later, but I use Contractors Keeper for all my finances and everything. I don't even deal with that anymore. You know what I'm saying? Because I'm not a financial person. And then that allows me to focus on the people in my company, the homeowners that I serve, and sales and go. But yeah, I think it's very important to, learn about finances as much as possible. And if you don't know, get the right people in your corner, whoever that may be, Yeah.
Yes.
And
Huh?
you got to be careful with finances, because I've heard of instances where people had the right person in their corner, and it wounds up that they were taking tons of money from them and skimming off the top, and driving the company even further in debt. And so you just have to be careful. It's a very important thing.
Yes, and it also depends on respecting that you don't know certain things. Like you just mentioned that even I started my company because I cannot just do that 9 to 5. Like I feel I'm not built for that, and we start that company. But I was reading this book, like this is The Art of Thinking Clearly, and it's on my table now. It mentioned that there are two kind of people: one who don't know something, and the second who don't know that they don't know something. So if we know that we don't know particular things, and that's when we strive to learn them. Now let's just come back to starting your copper roofing journey. I have a question here, Kaleb, that you have your dad, like since childhood you had the experience of working with copper. Like I would say that this was maybe a leverage for you, but a lot of people, like you also said, that there are not many courses or knowledge available dedicated to copper, that how to do this kind of work. But you were someone who was experienced in into all of this since your childhood. So let's just say someone wants to get into this right now. What it would be the step by step approach to just pursue the copper work?
Yeah. It's like we mentioned in the podcast, if you don't know something about it, learn about it. And so, doing the research and getting the books, reading the books on copper work, right? On copper flashing. And now on Instagram and TikTok, there's tons of companies out there. And so you're able to look at these companies, and if you see somebody that's consistently doing copper work, like I know of 5 or 6 guys around the nation that do copper work. Well, learn from them if you can. A lot of guys, they may not be as open to share things, because they don't want somebody to come into their local market and start doing copper work and take all the jobs from them, right? But you can learn things from that. And then just the type of person you are. If you really want to learn it, you want to be a good contractor and a good steward of copper craftsmanship, then it'll show in how you run your company. And so people may want to partner with you, or you can pay a consultant or a professional to travel to you to help train and teach you, doing those type things. Because honestly, there's just not a lot of places out there where you can go and just learn copper work, right? And I know not everybody is going to be exposed to it like I was. Like right now, say 5 years ago, if I just wanted to start another roofing company, I may have been one of those that just fizzled out in 5 years. But because I had that niche work of copper, I've learned it my whole life. I'm able to be successful in my business. I've got that copper work as a bolt-on to my roofing company, right? And so just seeking out the right wisdom and knowledge and learning and watching and observing. That's how I learned it. It's just watching and observing. There is no shortcut. It's hard to just throw money at a problem if you're not going to be able to like really go through the steps and really learn from it and apply it. Yeah.
Cool. And as we are heading to the end of this interview, earlier in the interview, you mentioned that you closed your construction company as well. So there must have been some learnings or some key takeaways that you had from them. What were those, and what were the things that you decided that you won't do in any business that you would start later in your life at any stage?
Yeah, is like you said, there's two different people. There's people that don't know, and there's people that don't know they don't know, And so get out of your own way early in your business. If there's things that you don't know or you need help, seek that out, and delegate that. They say quit wearing all the hats and give that hat to someone else, right? So do that early as you can. Like I wish when I was first starting out years ago that I would have
Hmm.
delegated finances or found the right financial person to help take care of that for me, because it's something I just didn't know. I
Hmm.
wasted so much time on my business not having the finances right, right? And then at the same time, I wish that I would have been able to, grow that business and grow relationships and get salesmen
Hmm.
earlier than
Hmm.
I did. But at the same time, I'm kind of glad that it took me a while to get a few salesmen, because now I'm able to have a good company. I'm able to bring them into the culture that I have, that the company has
Hmm.
created, and we're doing things ethically and honestly. And so I've always tried to do that. But I would say if anybody is getting into business, worry about those two important things of your company: the
Hmm.
finances and the sales. But in between there, make sure it's ethical what you're doing. It's honest. It's fair. You're doing the right thing by the people that work for you and by the customers that you serve. And then you'll
Hmm.
have a well-rounded, a well-built, company in the end.
Perfect. And one thing that I have learned or I have felt that a lot of your wisdom or your life learnings are coming from your dad. Like you mentioned that your dad shared that the foundations and the roof are the two most important things in a home. So, what are the top three learnings that you had from your dad that have helped you in your life?
Yeah, I think with taking care of the people that work for me, I can
Hmm.
relate to my dad taking care of our family and
Hmm.
providing for us well and making sure
Hmm.
that we had everything that we needed. Now, he worked a lot and he was gone, but when he was there, he was spot on. But I saw the love that he had in the family and with my mom and for us
Hmm.
kids. And so
Hmm.
that helped me to be able to take care of the people that work for me. And I try to like just be over generous to the people that work for me. Yeah, you got commissions and you got hourly pay and all this, but the extra thing, the lunches, the let's go and do something as a team, you know,
Hmm.
let's go to a conference and do a little team vacation conference trip or something like that. Take care of the people within your organization and they'll
Hmm.
take care of you in the end. And so that's one thing that I learned from my dad. And then to be honest, I always saw my dad. He said what he was going to do, and he did what said he was going to do. And so if he told somebody he was going to be there, he was going to be there. If he's going to, do it this way, that's the way he did it. And that being honest, no matter, he would lose jobs, but the
Hmm.
people that were his customers always stuck with him. I remember back in the days, we had an 8-month waiting list of customers. And they said, as
Hmm.
long as you can put a tarp on this house or dry it in, we'll wait. And they would wait for 8 months, 9 months, a year and a half just for him to come do a shingle roof or flashing or wood roofs or tile roofs. And so we've lost that. And so by him having a good reputation, he had that good customer base that were his customers. And so I've learned to have a good reputation. That way I've
Hmm.
got good customers that are my customers and that will understand when it takes a little longer. Because let's just be honest, everybody's used to Amazon. You click and
Hmm.
buy something and it's at your house that afternoon or the next day. Well, roofing is not always going to be like Amazon. You can't just click the button and boom, there's a roof up there. It takes time. So having a good reputation and being honest gets you good customers that will wait. They will want you to do the. And so, I learned those two things from my dad, and those have really just been the things that really just helped me in my life right there. To have a well-rounded life and a good business and a reputation in my community.
I have also learned something from what you have just said, that when you were talking about this, I was thinking back in my mind that when you don't do what you say, first of all, you are not respecting your own words. You are not respecting yourself. Like you just also mentioned earlier that you have to say no. I feel that when you are saying no to particular jobs too, you are respecting yourself. You are paying respect to your own self. And if you don't do what you say and you are a leader as well, your team becomes habitual of this. Like they know that if Kaleb is saying something or if Muhammad is saying something, we know that he is not going to do that. And that is when you lose your credibility as a leader too.
Yeah, that's it. As soon as there's a chink in the armor, nobody has respect for you anymore. And once that respect is gone, no matter what you do, you may be able to patch up the relationship, but it's just gone. And people are going to say, well, that's just the way he always was. It was just a front. It was just a show. And I hope that I never fall into that category, right? Of being like that. And I always want to do it the right way to the best extent possible for me and my circumstances of where I'm.
Amazing. And I just have 2 or 3 questions left for you, Caleb. The
Oh,
first one is
absolutely.
that, okay, the first one is that you mentioned, like, in the very beginning of this interview, that people do things wrong when it is about copper specifically. So I want to know that what are the top 3 mistakes or top 3 things that people do wrong when they are newly beginning with the copper works, and what you want to tell them that these are the 3 things that might happen wrong in your first job or in your first 5 jobs, and this is how you can fix that.
Yeah. I mean, it's easy to get a price on copper, go to the distributor, get a price, find a metal shop to make it if you don't have a metal shop in your organization. So that's okay. The thing with copper is, and it all comes down to one thing, is making sure that where it's required, you're soldering crucial pivot points or corners. The biggest thing that I can say is around dormer flashings, where they go off of the dormer roof and back around underneath the shingles or the metal roofing. Making sure that when you're using copper, you're soldering that, or you have a technician that comes in that you've hired to solder that for you so that it doesn't leak water, because it will leak if you just caulk it and put shingles down over it. It will absolutely leak. It's just a matter of time before it does. And then around chimneys, the cricket on the back of a chimney, those pivot points where it turns and goes around the corner, it will leak if you do not solder it. So having somebody or learning it, getting that knowledge and soldering those corners. Just don't caulk copper. I mean, painted metal, there's no way you can really braze it or solder it. So you got to caulk it. I get that. But offer the customer the option and
Mhm.
to upgrade to the copper so that it can be done
Mhm.
right. And really, really explain why it should be done this way, Because at the end of the day, that one thing, not soldering, copper flashing in the right areas,
Mhm.
it can lead to a lot of damage, a lot of callbacks, a lot of upset customers. It can lead to a damaged reputation in your company. It can be really bad for you if you don't take care of that one thing with copper, is making sure it's soldered in the correct place.
Awesome. I've learned so many things from you in copper and about life generally. Thank you so much for being here. So my last question to you, Caleb, is that if you look back in time, what do you feel has been the weakest point of or the moment in your life, and how did you come out of that?
I've got those backstories like everybody, with business and relationship, and that's where I'm at now. Is as a result of that, with marriage and things like that. Making sure you do that right with business, you do that right. It's that common thread of who you are as a person.
Hmm?
You know, are you that ethical person? Are you that honest person? Do you really care about the people around you? Do you care about your company and doing it right? And so I've learned that from past, relationship, from past business dealings, to make sure you're doing all of it right and on board, because eventually it will catch up with you. And so if you're doing it all right, then you have nothing to worry about. But unfortunately, we're all a little, askew these days. We're all a little messed up. But I've learned those biggest things is like I said from my dad and different relationships along the way, is to take care of people, focus on that first, and then
Hmm?
building the company and all that will work out if you're doing things the way it's supposed to be done throughout your life.
Awesome. And you just said that if you don't do things right, like in business dealings too, that those things would catch you up. So is there any particular advice or signing of advice you have for other roofers about business dealings in general?
Yeah, just some of the biggest things that I see is contractors hear about it all the time, where there's one huge company and then a bunch of guys split off and make other companies because they saw how the company was making all this money. Well, yeah, there's a lot of money being made in the company, but there's a lot of overhead that you don't see. I remember talking to my dad about this one company. Oh, they're doing this and that and that. He goes, yeah, but you're not seeing all the overhead that they have, all the problems that they have. And so uh, it would probably be a better thing, if you want to start your own company, to make sure you understand everything about it. Yeah, there's a lot of profit margins. There's money to be made. But when you start a company, you got to worry about taxes, insurances, licensure, payrolls. Or you're going to have secretaries. You got to have vehicles. So doing all those things, because if you're just focusing on sales, oh, yeah, I'm a top producer, I'm a top seller. Well, then all these other things are slipping through the cracks if you're not doing them right. If you're not focusing on all the building blocks of your company, your finances, then no matter how much sales you have, at some point you're gonna suffer. Or it'll be like if somebody gets a contractor to do copper work and doesn't do it the correct way, and then it starts rotting the house. If you're focusing on just sales and you haven't built that company the way it's supposed to be, that little leak point in the flashing is going to rot down your whole company. And then you got to go in and do all this damage repair and tear it all out and try to rebuild it. So do it right from the beginning. Make sure your finances are good and you're treating your people good and you're treating your creditors good, your customers good, and you're going to have a good, well-rounded company.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time, Caleb. It was amazing talking to you, and I really enjoyed the conversation. Anything you just want to say or tell to the audience, summing up the conversation?
If you're in our central Mississippi area, we'd be more than happy to talk with you and consult with you on a building project or something like that. If you're a contractor watching this and you want to ask me questions, feel free to reach out. It's very easy to find me in my social media, my DMs, and I try to respond to every question. And Muhammad, I'm actually looking at launching some type of a program where I travel to companies or to contractors that want to learn more and putting together some type of a little training package for them that they can bring me and the team in, and we'll help train them on the basics of getting ready to go with copper work, with roofing, and with social media. So I think that's pretty cool.
Perfect.
So I'm looking forward to that.
Perfect. Maybe I can be of any value in that project as well. It was a lovely conversation with you, Caleb. Thank you so much for giving your time. Have a great day. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Muhammad. I'm glad to be here. Thank you for
Bye-bye.
having me on your podcast.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.